public school education in this country was never designed for Black, brown, indigenous students. I mean, if we think about like how and why it was built and the content of which that they were curating from preschool through 12th grade, it was always cultivating, perpetuating, the codification of America, of capitalism, of Eurocentricity, and how really white people in this country made this country. And the introduction of Black culture or history, or Latino Chicano history, or Asian Pacific Islander history, or indigenous history was always through the lens of deficit. It was less than. It was a few kind of heroes in those domains, but it was this really false narrative.
Today on the Road to Ambition podcast, Ambition Angels CEO Remi engages in a compelling conversation with Chris Chatmon, the visionary founder of Kingmakers of Oakland. Chris has dedicated his life to transforming the educational and life outcomes for Black boys and men, creating programs that nurture their potential from preschool through PhD. Join us as we delve into Chris's journey, the impact of Kingmakers, and his insights on education, community, and culture empowerment.
All right, Brother Chris, thank you for joining us. I'm excited about this conversation. Most of the conversations that I've had thus far have been with people who I've known for some time, but we just met. I actually came to to Kingmakers of Oakland, the symposium in the spring, and was blown away. I mean, I told you the first time we met that when I was in high school, I was in this African-based rites of passage program for young boys, Black boys in Portland, called Prospective Gents Club. And I mean, it introduced me to my history in an empowering way for the first time. It surrounded me with positive Black male role models. They took us all around the country and visited colleges, and I look back and realize how critical that moment was for how I navigate the world as a Black man. And I've been looking for programs like that, right? And even just in awe of the program at that time and who built that, brother by the name of Kevin Fuller, incredible. And when I came to the symposium and saw it and it opened up with you speaking, and I was like, oh, okay, this is giving me a lot of, vibes from that. And then as it went forward, not only were your words so relevant, but it permeated the whole organization. And I saw the students and how they moved. And I saw the alumni leading sessions in a way. I was like, wow, they are owning this in a way that only would be possible if the message you were saying matched up with how you really practiced. And so I was like, this is the real deal. I did some research and asked around a bunch of folks, and everybody was like, no, real deal, real deal, real deal. I said, look, as we build our organization, as we build our, our company, but also our product and the curriculum, I want it to be infused with the same authenticity, the intentionality with which you do your work. So before anything, as somebody who's just met you, if I even can give you flowers, I got to give you flowers and say salute to what you're building and who you are in the Oakland community.
Ashe. Thank you, Brother Remi. And I welcome and receive those flowers in service of our forefathers and foremothers who really sacrificed having to deal with far more with far less in order for us to do exactly what we're doing. And so all praise really to the Most High and our ancestors. But I give thanks for the opportunity to live my passion and purpose in service to the next generation. So give thanks.
Beautiful, beautiful. All right, well, let's hop into it. I want to, before we get into the work of Kingmakers, I want to get into Chris Chatmon, the man. And, when I, as a youth developer, kind of like by trade and by probably just in my genes, to be honest with you, I look at young kids and I imagine them as adults. I look at adults and I think about them as kids. And I'm like, what did you get? What were you like? What happened when you were in these formative teenage years? And so I really want you to just take us back to Chris Chatmon, the teenager. Walk us through what you were like, what was happening at that time, and what kind of helped shape the man that you are today.
Ashe. Wow, beautiful question on so many different levels. I really feel that, yeah, the first 50 years of my life was figuring out how to be an adult, and the next 50 is really figuring out how to be a child, and getting back to that that spirit of the 10-year-old Chris, the 15-year-old Chris. I mean, in many different levels, brother. That 15-year-old Chris of what was inside me, that creativity, the loving of outdoors, the feeling that I felt in helping younger people. I learned that very early on of the gift and the joy that it brought me to coach or to support. All of those things are still within me. I think now just being able to draw that out in a way, all of the barriers and insecurities I might have had then in many levels have been moved out of the way. And so that 15-year-old little Chris was, a young brother with Jerry Curl who was, navigating, navigating the community in the spirit of I really didn't experience school as a place that really where I felt comfortable, where I felt seen, I felt heard. And so where I felt that was, sports. Where I felt that was at the Boys and Girls Club. Where I felt that was in summer camp. And so it took a lot within me during the school day to keep my head up and not to question myself around, how smart was I, or was I smart, or, am I going to go to college? Like the experience that I had in public schools, generally speaking, was a place, yeah, I just didn't feel seen, heard, or valued. And I'm blessed, though, that through sports, through the Boys and Girls Club, and really the most transformative place in my formative years, really from the age 7 to about 17, happened at summer camp, where that's where I felt like my greatness was manifest in so many different ways, that I could be exactly who I was, a very talkative little kid who loved doing a lot of everything. So I found joy and success in archery, in swimming, in jungle gym, in shooting 22 rifles, in riding horses. And it was all of that that really I began to believe that the only thing that would stop me in life was me. And that was because at camp, it didn't matter what activity I went to. Those people that worked at arts and crafts or nature trail or these different, always like, oh, here comes Chris, and they saw the joy, and they saw me as really a talented young person and developed that. So I just felt that really prepared me more than anything around the obstacles that we all face. That I could, yeah, once I set my mind to it, the only thing stopping me was me. And so that was important because I think the next really tectonic shift was my first Black Studies class in community college, which then kind of, all right, cool. I have confidence. I knew that, I could do a lot, yet I struggled with because, I'm ethnically I'm mixed, but my mom and dad who adopted me are both African American, much darker than myself. My brother was much darker than me, and I always had this. All right, okay, I'm Black, but color was always, I was hypersensitive, only because I was always the super light skin in family, and there was always this question of something. And so it wasn't until community college where one of the most profound formative instructors I had, Dr. Zelty Crawford, really unlocked and unleashed the power of Pan-Africanism, of African American history, of African cosmology, that then helped me begin on this life journey of beginning to unlearn what I thought I was and who I was, and leaning into the power, the cultural prosperity of Africans in this country and Africans throughout the diaspora. So that's a little bit about background, who I am, and who I belong to, so to speak, in this journey I'm on now and moving forward.
Yeah, that's beautiful. That's a beautiful story. Appreciate you sharing that. I have to ask you, because it's such a common experience where you talk to folks, especially people of color, who have a similar experience of not really feeling seen and validated and like they belong in the K-12 public education system.
Yeah.
And it's often the outside of school opportunities and people who really see you. So I can't believe that it's the individual teachers who just somehow choose to become a teacher and then don't want to see black and brown. I can't believe that. What do you think it is about the system, the K-12 education system, that produces so many stories like yours?
Yeah. Well, I think we have to look at and understand like public school education in this country was never designed for Black, Brown, Indigenous students. I mean, if we think about like how and why it was built and the content of which that they were curating from preschool through 12th grade, it was always cultivating, perpetuating, the codification of America, of capitalism, of Eurocentricity, and how really white people in this country made this country, and the introduction of Black culture or history or Latino Chicano history or Asian Pacific Islander history or indigenous history was always through the lens of deficit. It was less than, it was a few kind of heroes in those domains, but it was this really false narrative. And so in that design, knowing too the outcome of that system was not to produce entrepreneurs, innovators, solvers of complex issues. It was really to teach conformity and service to this sort of capitalistic structure. So with that being said, this this public school system really again was never designed. So when you get teachers who then went to who came up in these systems, Black, white, male, female, male, or otherwise, and then go to teacher credentialing programs or administrative credentialing, like that whole pedagogy, that whole ethos is then further perpetuated and accelerated to support, protect that approach to education, which then leaves, in particular, children of color having to let go of who and whose they are and conform and master things that aren't inherently within their culture or in their community. And so that therein lies, and even still we rise in, but why we wonder the disproportionate educational outcomes for Black, Brown, Indigenous youth, it's because by design. And so we have really the public school education system in this country needs to be completely dismantled and reimagined for the minority, which is now the majority. And we have to rewrite curriculum in this country, pre-K through 12th grade, in math, science, language arts, and social studies that lifts up the cultural prosperity and genius of people of color, that it didn't start with their proximity into this country, which was to serve capitalism and Eurocentricity, that we have to bring the generations of legacy of their culture beyond the start of this country. So I think we see people in their beauty, their genius, and the potential of what we can do in coming together. So hopefully that gives a little
Yeah,
insight
100%.
on,
And so much of what
yeah.
you're saying right now is kind of almost a perfect lead in to the ethos of Kingmakers and even the goal of Kingmakers of Oakland. But before we get there, like as you're talking and even as you spoke, as I heard you spoke, I always wonder with folks like you who are kind of prolific thinkers. Okay, yes, you shouted out sister at the community college who taught you. I understand that. But what did you see between then and the journey to Kingmakers that gave you this perspective and insight? Like, can you just talk us a little bit about your early career? What were you seeing and experiencing that led you to even take this on as a venture?
Yeah. Well, I think one of the contexts in terms of my own journey of being adopted was this understanding of love isn't defined by blood. That love, for me, at the most core, were those people that conditioned themselves to love unconditionally, and I sought that in the sense of I had to rationalize, like, all right, I had two people that loved me enough to let me go, and then I had two people that loved me enough to call me their own, And so as I would move and navigate, I had to move a little bit differently in the sense of the value of relationships. And so I was blessed to have, dope white folk in my life that, too, in boys and girls clubs, in camp. It wasn't just all, black and brown folk. But I just say that to say that I began to see the value of people that demonstrated this unconditional love, that when they saw me come into the park or the club or in places where I took on the position of a wilted flower, they would, in their own way, like, hey, no, lift up your head. Like, hey, let's go try this. And so I liked that. And I gravitated to that where I wanted to then, hey, I wanted to be around them. I wanted to support them to the degree of which I then, in showing my appreciation, I wanted to model that. And so as early as 13 on my block, I would go to my neighborhood and I would start volunteering with T-ball, or it was always kind of this proximity then to, as others were modeling to me what unconditional love and support looked like, I then just learned I had to practice, and my way of valuing that was to give back. And so every job I've had since the age of really 13, I learned how to stay at camp longer, was to get these little odds and end jobs as a cabin leader in training. So I worked at Park and Rec, I worked through the Boys and Girls Club, I worked at the very same camp, worked at the YMCA, became a teacher. All of these things were really contributing to what at the end of the day, when I grow up, I wanted to be a transformative educator. And I'm still wanting to be a transformative educator. But it was this hypersensitivity to the next generation. And it was because the way people poured into me. And so as I then began to learn other complexities around race, class, and culture, my first Black Studies class was actually Dr. Zelty Crawford, a brother whose son Juma works in Oakland, all love, but beginning then to understand the power of knowing your cultural legacy and seeing that from an asset level, then began to open my mind to Dr. Wade Nobles, Dr. Asa Hilliard, and other brothers within the movement, and sisters. So I started learning more around rites of passage, learning more and practicing, Joe Marshall, his program in San Francisco. That's when kind of the work I was already doing took a slightly different approach to then wondering, well, why are these younger brothers struggling at school similar to me? And then when I saw them in other domains, how they would just accelerate good to great, I started learning about rites of passage and the power of, again, your history. And so I started, then got my master's in social studies, master's in education. So then just growing into learning about that, not as I'm an expert, but just understanding the value of that from a cultural standpoint, that our history didn't start as enslaved people in this country, that actually the origin of humanity, academic discipline, religion, science, all of these things really started in Kemet, in Africa, and then seeing how that impacted the globe just was another way for me to move as our ancestors intended us, with my head up and with love and grace, humility, but also, we are with power. And so that has been the journey I've been on, but it's been an evolved journey. And I want to acknowledge I've been blessed to have white allies, Latino Chicano, indigenous allies, and for sure, foundationally, Africans and African American folks that have poured love into me, that have allowed me now to do what I do in centering Black boys, not excluding, but we are intentional and unapologetic in our approach to centering Black children, in particular this country, in light of this country's history, as a way to support all children. And so that's the journey I'm on, and the movement I try to stay within, local and global.
So if somebody meets you and they're like, okay, I like your hat, that's fly. What does that represent? You say, oh, it's my organization, Kingmakers of Oakland. They see the jacket, et cetera, right? How do you explain to them, what you're trying to accomplish? Like what do you hope to do? And what have you learned kind of in the process?
Yeah, no, all love. Well, simply put, our mission is to improve educational life outcomes of Black boys and men from preschool through PhD. Symbolism is very important. So, as you see the logo on our hat, the 3 points of our crown, as people ask me, well, what can I do to Black boys, or what can I do in service of? You can engage them, E, the first point. The middle point is you can encourage them, like don't hate, cooperate, celebrate, like let them know I see you. And then the third point of the crown is empower. Like at the end of the day, how are we empowering our young people? The 3 lines stand for self, so knowledge of self. And I got to make sure, in order for me to tap into the collective genius of others, like I got to be right with self. The second line is brotherhood, sisterhood. So if I'm taking care of myself, I can be in relationship and access the power and potential of brotherhood and sisterhood. The third line is family. So knowing that, that we are like this, even in this country, like your biological father is your only, no, we come from a culture where you have babas and mamas, like the village, like there's multiple fathers and mothers, and the power and beauty in that takes alignment with self, brotherhood, and family. And then the circle is Ubuntu. I am because we are because I am. May the circle be unbroken. And so we're really, Brother Remi, on this journey. Not that we're doing anything new, or not that this work will end with me. I'm just a conduit. I think on many levels, we're trying to create the system, the structure, the network, the social capital, of which then the next generation could leverage our building, our camp, how we're moving globally to go farther, faster. And so, we do a lot of things. We work with schools locally and globally. We want to accelerate the 2 superpowers that are suppressed in this country outside of kindergarten, and that's creativity and imagination. And so having our cool labs where we could cultivate and celebrate and accelerate creativity in music, film, animation, video, TV, podcasts, and fashion design is another very important domain that schools under the pandemic, when they shut down, we don't have access, right? In some of these other states, there's certain things you can't even say in these buildings. Well, when you own your own land and you have best in class, like there's no one can stop us on creating asset-based stories that teach and cultivate entrepreneurial skills that are accelerating content for the culture that's asset-based in music, film, animation, video, TV, podcasts, and fashion design. So that allows us to continue far beyond me. And then the camp as a place of healing, as a place to getting out of these built toxic environments, to go and tap into our not the AI that everyone's on right now around artificial intelligence, but that ancestral intelligence, the ability to ground and be in relationship with the earth, to be in proximity with redwood trees and rivers and the nature. That is another way that helps you make meaning, helps get you centered and tap into that ancestral intelligence that's been embedded in our DNA, but because of the noise and the filters that don't reflect who and whose we are, we don't typically we're not able to access in that. So the camp is going to be another place where our outdoor education, our rites of passage, our ongoing professional development, year-round programming, and a place throughout the diaspora that then, as we build and grow, folks can come from all over the diaspora to do just that. Outdoor education, rites of passage, and Heal Mindfulness Retreat Center. And then the other aspect of our evolution of our work is just that. Like, I think in this country, African Americans, who are the only monolingual Black folk on the planet, we have to get outside of our, this is my block, East versus West, or no. When we tap into the superpower that we possess throughout the diaspora, I feel the collective will go farther, faster, and we'll be able to not get bogged down in the politics, the dynamics that really keep us with our heads down and hypersensitive to local. We'll be able to tap into global and move in ways that we were always intended to create, to innovate for decades to come. And so us moving and setting that infrastructure up. So when I talk about the work, given upon where we're at, that's kind of where we're at in our journey. And
love it. I want you to kind of give me a story whether it's an individual young king that you've worked with, whether it's a situation with a school partner, et cetera, that kind of like typifies the success you're trying to see, right? Like what is produced from that what you just said was a lot. I mean, I think y'all are recognizing it takes a lot to undo what 400 years in this country has been. It's not like if we just get them to read by third grade, we're good. Yes, that's maybe a part of it, but it's a really broad scope. So give me an example of someone or something or some experience that can give us insight into the success.
Sure. And I appreciate you acknowledging there is no one single thing. Like it's around legacy work, because in particular with the commodification and the assault on Black minds, Black bodies in this country, just because now you graduate from high school and you have a 4.0 and access to all these colleges, you can be walking down the street and still meet that profile. So I just say this and still get these egregious access to high percentage rates, loans, all these different things, just based on this built environment. So a couple of stories, high level. One, my co-chair of directors, we're a $7 million organization, is Brother Romero Wesson. I met him in 6th grade at Frick Middle School. He was introduced. His first manhood development instructor was Brother Keith Muhammad, an extraordinary brother in the Oakland community, and his Muslim brother who began to pour into Romero, who just lost his brother due to murder, a homicide, in 6th grade. Romero stayed with us through middle school, then went to Castlemine High School and matriculated into our manhood development program with another brother who's also teaching him around our curriculum, our Mastering Our Cultural Identity curriculum modeling. He's now on the Student Leadership Council. So he's at that point traveling with me, doing presentations at the Coalition of Essential Schools Educating Boys of Color, at the White House Education Summit on African American Achievement, at the Castle Summit. So all that to say, then he graduates from high school and becomes an entrepreneur, purchases not just one building, a few buildings, and becomes the co-chair of our board of directors. So I say this to say that he has been in our milieu, kind of direct and indirect, since he was in 6th grade. Now he's the co-chair of our organization. Josiah, his counterpart, 6th grade. Now he's a junior at Morehouse, the vice president at large for Morehouse University on our board of directors. One of our interns started in our elementary school program, Piedmont Avenue, with Brian Bassett, then went to the middle school program at Monterey with Brother Kevin, then went to high school at Oakland Tech, then now is at Sac State, was in our first graduating cohort of our college access program, and now he's interning here sophomore year. So we talk about pre-K through PhD as we realize that Black men in this country at every level are under assault in education, in economics, in the healthcare system, in the justice system. And so for us to figure out a way that we've created the continuity of services from really preschool to elderhood, and that there is that alignment, because this country, as a result of slavery, broke up the intergenerational continuity of our culture. That prior to us coming here, and really prior to desegregation, we were in communities of which our neighbor was our doctor, our teacher. Like, we were in communities where you saw that. And now it's so fragmented that it's taking, be it the church, mosque communities, nonprofit, and others. So we believe one of the answers is creating continuity of service from really, early childhood to sunrise to sunset, and that's the journey we're on.
Yeah. I know that your work is birthed in Oakland, but you're thinking nationally, right? But I want to lock in on Oakland. Sure. For a lot of different reasons. One, because Kingmakers of Oakland is from Oakland. We are trying to join a movement to serve Oakland youth this upcoming year. But there's a lot of headlines about Oakland and what's happening in Oakland. And as somebody who is working on the ground to support Oakland youth, to challenge and change the systems that support Oakland youth, what trends are you seeing? Like, how would you describe the trends you're noticing in any regard, like whether that be in Oakland, in the Oakland schools, and like give us some insight from your perspective, what you're seeing right now in 2024.
Yeah, I want to acknowledge, I think, how some of the trends, in particular Oakland, are no different than all urban cities in this country. I guess one of the trends I'll tap into is around gentrification. And you're seeing the displacement of what were historically Black neighborhoods in many of our urban cities of now those folks being displaced and moving out to communities where they don't have infrastructure, they don't have cultural connective tissue, and they're in these communities that have no experience with the culture or with the community. So that is not just an Oakland thing. I think that's what I'm seeing across this country. I think what we're doing in Oakland, I think, are figuring out ways, because based on that trend, people are still coming back to Oakland for the culture, for for church, for community, and on that level, I just want to lift up the folks that are here. There's amazing things that unfortunately get foreshadowed by the negative stuff, which is real, but no different than any other urban environment. That this city still is a cultural mecca. It is still one of the most innovative cities on the planet. And as we act radically locally, we want to influence globally. So I'll lift up the work of Brother Fab, who's been doing it's an acronym, but basically just bringing brothers that a lot of organizations kind of in a community context haven't necessarily connected to create safe space, in particular for Black boys and men to be, love on each other, and heal. Brother Correga Bailey, an extraordinary local artist, is doing similar work in creating places and spaces for intergenerational groups of brothers to come together, heal, talk, and move forward. We have our Brotherhood of Elders, a group that has been around now for about 2 decades, formally, that has been working with younger brothers, similarly around like rites of passage, been advocating for our community. We have leaders such as Brother Lauren Taylor, who just hosted a Juneteenth festival, acknowledging local heroes. So I say this to say that I think one of the themes is the Calvary ain't coming to save any of us. That if we're going to find solutions in our community, that we got to look to each other. And how do we stop calling each other out, but calling each other in? And I'd like to say, in the spirit of Oakland, I'm seeing that trend where brothers going to work it out. Sisters going to hold each other accountable and support one another. That our elders are realizing that we've become a little disconnected from our younger generation. So how do we find more places where we can be in shared community? And so I'd like to say that Oakland is doing a lot of amazing things here. It's just because of television and really this corporate media structure wants to prime and perpetuate negative, and then we begin to set our consciousness and unconsciousness to that. So yeah, to believe it. So there's so much so we'd have to do a whole separate podcast from Black Joy festivals to the Afro Comic Con to what David, another brother does the International Black Film Festival that's hosted here as well. There's amazing things happening every weekend, every week, every month, and so I'll shine a light on. Yeah, Oakland still is one of the leaders in this country around innovation and how the community can really solve for issues that are real to our community as well. But it is by design in a lot of what we see too. So, yeah.
No, I love that that shout out to the culture of Oakland really owning the solutions. It's a community that hasn't really complained and looked outward to try to solve, the problems that are being faced. Is a real sense of agency in Oakland that is the foundation of any creativity. You have to own it and then say, I'm responsible and we're going to create something. I've always respected Oakland. You know, East Palo Alto, which is the city I've been in for the last 18 years, is like a little mini Oakland. Really took a lot of the culture and the swagger from the big brother right across the bay. So much respect to Oakland. All right, I want to transition us into our last section, which is just like a four questions that we like to ask all of our guests. And I'll start with, what is one critical life skill that you think every teen should master to be successful as adults?
I mean, so one critical thing I think that's top of mind, that I would say, really discipline. I mean, um, yeah, I think to the degree of which young people have a dream and a vision for themselves, then they're going to need to practice, and we all need to practice that. What are those steps then, and the discipline of learning, the discipline of turning off the TV, the discipline of exercise, of eating, of study. But it's going to require some level of discipline to manifest that greatness. And so, as much as I would share to any young person that is listening right now, is all things are possible. And so, start with an audacious vision, and then give yourself permission to reverse engineer from that audacious vision, and then have the discipline to map out those steps and never accept no. Ask people for informational meetings. If one door closes, go to another. But it's going to require discipline, faith, and audacious vision to manifest whatever it is that they may see. So the first step I would say would be the discipline.
Technology is obviously on the rise, right, and becoming kind of integrated into our daily lives in a way that when we were growing up, that was not as much the case, I have to say. And so we like to talk about technology as a tool. And so can you recommend a tool or an app that you think every teen should be mastering and using to make sure that they're successful as this world changes?
Wow. I'd like to say, as I'm getting familiar with your app, that I definitely lift up your app as a place, a resource for all young people. I mean, I would say, as probably not the most technically sophisticated person, though, is in the spirit of right now, we have access, I mean, to so much information. And to the degree our young people can leverage technology to help them understand and solve for challenging problems, is to, again, not accept no or not knowing. When you have access, you can go to the library, you can go to places then where you can't find, if the school doesn't want to help, or if individuals don't want to help, all love, go to a place where you can access technology to answer your questions and help you manifest whatever it is that you want to solve for, manifest, or accomplish. And on that level, technology you can help accelerate all of that. So it is a broad response, but I think because it's rapidly updating and there's so many different things, I would just say, man, leverage it to do what it is that you need to do in support of self and your community.
Love it. All right. So let's say you're talking to a group of adults, all of whom are working with teens, right? What is what's a piece of advice that you would give them based on your experience, and you have their ears now? What's your message to them?
Yeah, to any and all people that are blessed to serve young people, I think the one bit of advice I would say is to become a student of the students. Like, if you're moving in service of young people, you really have to master them, meaning understanding, what are their values? Who are they? Whose are they? Understanding their, how do they learn? Their learning styles. What are they interested in? What are they not interested? So taking the stance of really listening, of inquiring about who they are, whose they are, and how they see themselves. And I say that to say that once you've understand that with love and grace, then you could be able to accelerate the content you may have and how to tee it up, present it, teach it in a way that's in harmony with the student. But if you're just, pouring out and being a sage on stage or information dissemination, the reality is, you may feed and fuel some students, but the vast majority, you're going to blow by because we haven't really mastered, so to speak, understanding who that student is and what is important to them and how they make meaning of life and information. So the one thing I would say is be a student of the student, and be graceful and take time. That is a lifelong journey. But it'll give you all the insight, if you're well intended, then on how to impart information in a way that the student really owns it and receives it, that it's theirs.
Love that. All right. And lastly, you have 30 seconds and you have the undivided attention of every single black and brown teen in America right now. Chris Chatmon is on. They're watching. What do you tell them? What's your message to them?
Hey, y'all. The one thing I would say is kind of protect three areas. You are what you see, you are what you say, you are what you hear. And so be aware of the things that you're looking at. And if what you're looking at brings you down or questions, man, pick up a book, look at things, go to places that that reflect back to you, your beauty, your brilliance, your innate greatness. You are what you hear. Be aware of what you're hearing, conscious and unconscious. But the power of the drum and music is a way to evoke your chakras and your synapses to receive content. So words are foundational. Be aware of what you're listening. And the last one is you are what you say. Never put yourself down. Say asset-based positive things to others and yourself. And so just protect those three gates: your ear gate, your eye gate, and your mouth gate. And if you do that, you'll find yourself manifesting greatness and being all that you want and hope to see.
Brother Chris, thank you.
Right on, King. Thank you for the opportunity to share a little bit of myself with you and all the listeners.